So next we're going to move on to our panel discussion. And I think we're going to play a video quickly ahead of the panel discussion. Hi everyone, and thanks for coming back to join us for this panel discussion. We are very excited that we have got some of our leading sports stars along with us now. As I said earlier, these were our top 5. We asked these ladies to be part of it, and thankfully they all said yes, so we're hugely excited. I'm going to ask each of our guests to introduce themselves and tell us their most memorable moment. Then we're going to go into the discussion points, and please do engage with us through gamechangersni.com. You can ask questions. I have the screen here, and there's lots of lovely questions coming in. Or you can use Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and use that hashtag GameChangersNI hashtag. So we'll maybe start with Simone. Simone, if you want to just introduce yourself and tell us your most memorable moment within sport.
Yes, hello, my name's Simone Magill. I am a professional football player. I play for Everton Women, and I also play for Northern Ireland. My most memorable moment would probably have to be 2016 when I scored the fastest goal in international women's football. We were playing against Georgia at home in Belfast, and right from kickoff, I managed to score a goal in 11 seconds, and it just broke all these records. And yeah, it turned out to be the fastest goal in international history for women. So I would probably have to give that my best moment ever in my career.
Say so, Simone. Claire, do you want to tell us a bit?
Yeah, my name's Claire McLaughlin, and I play rugby with Ireland. And I'm also working as a junior doctor in A&E. And my most memorable sporting moment was probably playing in the World Cup in 2017. So that World Cup took place in Ireland. So we had the pool stages in Dublin, and then the finals were all in Belfast. And for me, the year running up to that World Cup was really stressful because I just qualified as a doctor. So I was trying to balance work and rugby and all the training and prep and driving to Dublin and everything for to prepare for this World Cup. So getting to run out in that stadium wearing the green jersey in front of such a massive home support and a lot of my friends and family who had supported me throughout that year, it was really special. So yeah, that was my best moment.
Sounds amazing. Hannah, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm the old age pensioner and amongst everybody in here. Hello, everybody. I'm Hannah. I've been very privileged. I was the first woman from Northern Ireland to summit Mount Everest. I've been the first woman in Ireland to ski to the North Pole, and I have represented Ireland and Northern Ireland in 5 different sports: cross-country running, mountain running, ultra-distance running, duathlons and triathlons. And believe it or not, the thing I'm proudest of, I took up triathlons at 50 years old, learned to swim, learned to cycle for the first time, and at 52 became the oldest lady to win an Irish National Series race. And for me, that just proved age is just not a barrier. It's never too old to take up a new sport and be successful if you're prepared to put the work into it. So I have to admit, I was quite proud of that moment.
I'm sure, Hannah, you're Superwoman or Wonder Woman, I'm not sure which. Okay, I'm just going around the screen as I say it. So Gemma, Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hiya, Gemma Begley, play Gaelic football with Carrickmore and formerly Tyrone, and I also work along with the Women's Gaelic Players Association, just work on behalf of the players. My most memorable moment was probably my last in my Tyrone jersey. We won the All-Ireland Intermediate final in 2018, and it probably meant the most because I'd lost so many before that, and it was my last day out in the Tyrone jersey, so it was very special. It was a massive crowd. There was 40,000 odd in Croke Park that day. So it was just very special to share it with family and friends. And to sign off on a high, I suppose, was a good way to go.
That sounds amazing, Gemma. Gosh, we've got such talent in this on the screen here. It's brilliant. And Katie, last but not least, by any stretch.
Yeah, hi guys. My name's Katie Mullan. I'm the current captain of the Irish women's hockey team. My most memorable sporting moment is probably beating Claire McLaughlin in the game of tag rugby many moons ago. It was probably in 2018 when we went to the World Cup in London, and we were ranked 15th out of the 16 teams, and we made it to the final. So running out onto the pitch, leading the country, that day was just a moment I never imagined I'd have the opportunity to experience, and one I'll never forget. So that was a very special day in front of a very big Irish crowd.
And Katie, that we rewatched the BBC documentary during lockdown that Nigel Ringland and the guys at BBC worked on. What a special moment. Just on media coverage, my first question is actually for Katie. So I don't know if you all were aware, but last weekend there was a bit of furore on social media, as there always is, around women's media coverage. So I think it was a southern story, but we've latched onto it. So in 24 pages of print media last weekend, there wasn't a single line about women's sport. We're really lucky in Northern Ireland. We have some really supportive media, and we work with them through Game Changers, through the campaign. But sometimes you look around and you wonder, are the sports editors, are the publishers, are the broadcasters reading the room? Do they see the talent we have? And Katie, I suppose I wanted to ask you, in 2018, the Irish hockey team just captured the imagination of the whole country, and there was so much media attention. Has that been sustained, or do you still feel that you have to really look for the media coverage?
I definitely think there was definitely a drop off, but we were very fortunate in that we hosted the qualifiers in last November, which came at the right time for us because maybe people had kind of forgotten about the Irish women's hockey team, and then that happened in Dublin as well. So but I would say, I remember flying over to compete at the World Cup in London, and when we were traveling over that day, a few people stopped us in the airport and asked where were we going, or what were we doing, what sport did we play. So I think probably the media coverage came after the success, and that's where we need to flip the coin, that the media coverage comes first. Because with media coverage comes funding, comes government support, and comes all those things that bring success. We can't expect sports people to win world titles and world medals before we all get behind them. So I think it's something that was a very hot topic, and there's obviously huge gains made, but you just wonder if the media are just doing it because they have to and have to be seen to, and we don't want that then to drop off when the likes of the 20 by 20 campaign finishes. So we need to get to a place where we don't have to talk about equality in sport because it's just something that's there.
And we have seen huge strides. Like there's no doubt about it. I have worked in sport in Northern Ireland for a long time, and there is a big difference now. It's just, it's a shame that we have to still talk about it. But I think it is something that's really interesting, and it's so important. You're talking about how the media coverage generates the interest, and it can help with the sponsors and the funding and all that. But it's also hugely important for the next generation because it leads to inspiring our next generation, and it leads to those conversations at home where children say, I want to play that sport, I want to be like her. And even myself, obviously I'm really involved in Game Changers and women's football, and my daughter is 5 and she sees what I'm talking about and she understands. And when Northern Ireland had a brilliant win a few weeks ago and she heard us talking about it, the next day she went and put on her full Northern Ireland kit to go out, and she was like, I want to be like them. So we have to always remember that it's so important for the next generation of sports stars coming through and for that enjoyment of sport that we do get the coverage. Moving on just into around attitudes around women's football and women's sport generally. We worked with Belfast Live at the weekend to do some polls. I don't know if you guys saw them. So we had some questions and there was a huge response. And one of the questions we asked about attitudes to women in sport, and 73% said that attitudes had improved over the last 5 years. And that echoes some research that we did with Game Changers last year, which is brilliant, but it means that 27% still feel negatively towards women in sport. So we all have a responsibility and work to do around that. Claire, I wanted to ask you, obviously rugby is one of the best sports out there, but it has been traditionally a male sport. Have you found that you've had to break through barriers or that there's been difficult attitudes in the past?
Yeah, I think, as you said, with rugby having been a predominantly male sport and still is a predominantly male sport, I think you are always going to come up against those negative attitudes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, those attitudes are from people who haven't had any exposure to the game. The women's game, that is, they are making assumptions and have these preconceived ideas about what it's like. So yeah, no, I've definitely had plenty of negative comments, but in saying that, I have noticed a change in a lot of people's attitudes. So whenever I tell people I play rugby, it's not now, women shouldn't play sport. It's, I didn't realize women play rugby. Oh, why shouldn't they? Yeah. So there is definitely a bit of a change there. And even an example is like my fiance Johnny, before we got together, he had never watched women's rugby before in his life, and he had the preconceived idea that it would be terrible, that it would be poor quality. And first of all, that really annoyed me. But then whenever he actually came and started watching it, he was like, this is so entertaining. This is such a good standard. And I'm really enjoying this. Why have I never done this before? So I think that just emphasizes we need more exposure. We need to give people the opportunity to watch women's sport so that they can form their own actual opinions about it, and so that they don't have these assumptions which just aren't right.
Yeah, I think I've seen that certainly with the Game Changers campaign with football, unless, men particularly and men of a generation, unless they've seen it, they don't really understand how good it can be. Hannah, I wanted to ask you about attitudes to women in sport, because you've probably experienced just, I would imagine, so much respect from people because you're amazing because of the things that you've done.
Do you know what? It was actually hard to begin with, because whenever I started doing my mountaineering and all the extreme sports, there was no other ladies doing it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I found myself going in and I suppose having to prove myself. And I did that because I accepted I was going into a male-dominated. I was the only female doing it at that stage. And then I got to a stage after, I got fed up of having to prove myself all the time. And I went, I am good enough. And after that, I just went, I'm here because I'm good at what I do. And I believed myself. I still worked very hard for it all, but it was hard to change, sort of a lot of people's perceptions whenever you were out in the ice, or you're up in a mountain, and all of a sudden, sort of the Irish team would come along and there would be this not so quiet Irish lady in the middle of them making a lot of noise. And you could see them looking, going, and I did get a lot of questions, why are you here? And I would have always come up, I'm here because I am good enough to be here, and I'm here because this is what I want to do.
That's probably a really important message for us all to take on board, just to remember that we have a place and we deserve our place.
But you will always come across people who will doubt you, you know, like sort of whether you're a male or female, and you know, like sort of those are the ones I think that, as the other ladies have said, they need the media coverage to see that there's a lot of people doing these things, and it's not men all the time. Like, I have to admit, whenever I was growing up, I was consumed by books. I was at boarding school, so I read all the time. But everything I read was written by men, and you know, sort of. But I still went, okay, I'm a lady, and it was after seeing, you know, sort of, I suppose, Mary Peters, you know, sort of winning the Olympics. I went, there's a lady from Ireland making it out there. I can make my mark in my sports.
Absolutely.
So that drove me on.
Yeah, I think it's all about that role model piece as well. Yeah. Simone, you obviously started with Northern Ireland when you were only 15. Did that cause a few raised eyebrows?
Yeah, I mean, my early days of playing football, I played with boys. There wasn't an awful lot of opportunities for girls, and I remember I went to try out for a boys team, and there must have been 100 boys there, and I was the only girl, and you could have seen every single boy stop and turn and be like, why is there a girl here? What's she doing? Girls in football, you know? And I faced that, you know, during my youth growing up, and you know, I joined the team. The team I was with were fantastic. They really embraced it because they just looked at me as a player I could play, and it was the other teams I used to come up against, you know, and we would be starting to kick the game off, and the boys in the other team would, you know, they would laugh and be like, there's a girl on the other team. And, you know, it's just it was one of them things that I just dealt with growing up. And, you know, now when I look at the opportunities for girls that I didn't have, it's fantastic that, you know, girls don't have to go through that anymore because it's slowly becoming more accepted. And I think that comes hand in hand with the media, you know, especially from in terms of football, just because I know that the media coverage the game's starting to get now it's fantastic. And, you know, even like you said about your little girl knowing about our game a few weeks back, and, you know, the coverage that we're getting on the international front is fantastic. And, you know, it's on the news. I think one of my teammates said to me, obviously I'm not back home at the moment, but my FA Cup game was the leading story on the news the other week. And that's fantastic. You know, I didn't get to see it, but, you know, to be leading with with women in sport, you know, and not what the men are doing, you know, that's fantastic. And things are slowly starting to change, and that's what we need. We need young girls to be able to be sitting at home eating their dinner and see female sports people on TV doing things so that they can be like, that's what I want to do, because I never had that growing up. And for a young child to have that now, you know, that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Simone, within Everton, how combined is the club? Are the men's and women's squads as one, if you like?
Yes, that's something Everton are really, really good at. You know, we're based at the men's training ground. Obviously with COVID and everything going on at the minute, things are a little bit different. But in normal circumstances, you know, we park our cars in the same place as the men. You know, we're in the building, we're crossing paths, and you know, it's fantastic that the club have really, really embraced us, and, you know, we are this one club mentality, and it's fantastic because, you know, we're doing exactly the same thing as the men, you know, professional footballers too, you know what I mean? So it's just nice to be appreciated, you know, from the club in that way.
Absolutely. Gemma, I wanted to bring you into the conversation, and obviously within your role at the GPA, you would have to advocate for women day and daily. How's that role going?
It's very varied. No 2 days are the same, but it's obviously very enjoyable. Like, it's something I'll be very passionate about. I suppose, and I'm usually speaking from experience. I suppose when you're challenging the status quo and things that you think aren't good enough, and speaking up, I suppose, and getting females to speak up on behalf of themselves is a big part of it. But I have, like, we're sort of 5 years into it now, and you can already see. I suppose it was happening anyway within the sports, but the developments even in 5 years has been massive. The growth in coverage, and I suppose attendances at finals, and the profile of the players, which was just a couple of things you were touching on there as well. I was just thinking, like, sort of the best sort of examples now nearly is when the males and females are appearing at sponsorship launches and things like that, that's just being treated as equals and recognised as such in the media and the coverage. So there's plenty done, still plenty to do. Like there's been a few advances in terms of provisions for players and services. We do things like scholarships and leadership training and counselling supports and things like that. And in 2017, we got government grants introduced for the first time for inter-county squads, just to help the athletes be the best that they can be. So yeah, it's good. Plenty of challenges too. There's still plenty of battles to be won, but you can see some of the things you touched on there as well. The attitudes are definitely changing.
Yeah.
We done an evaluation piece on the back of the government grants, and the players reported, I made a note of it here somewhere, that there was a big increase in how they felt perceived as elite athletes, both amongst the sporting population and the general population. And that's even in 2 years. I think it's up 41%. So it's definitely changing. It's going in the right direction.
Brilliant. And it's so important that the attitudes are moving in the right direction. Katie, within hockey, obviously it's a really popular game across Ireland. Have you seen a change day to day? Like, do people know who you are? And is there, are you stopped in the street, that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a change. I suppose in one way we're blessed with hockey because it's there's not so much an inequality in our sport in Ireland. But on the flip side of that, I would just say it's sort of maybe underfunded and undersupported and under-resourced across the board. But for me, yeah, definitely, and the rest of the girls, there's been a huge change, like people recognising you. It's funnier because I'm recognised less around home, more so in Dublin or Belfast, where the kind of hockey hubs lie. So, yeah, no, it's definitely getting there. And I think the best thing for me, growing up, like as an aspiring hockey player, you didn't really know who your role model was, and maybe you were looking at Dutch internationals or overseas to Australia and whatnot, whereas now I think there's the role models are there now for the young girls coming through, and they can see the direct pathway for, okay, I need to try and make an Ulster team, and then from that I can make an underage international team. And I think that's the biggest thing, for the kids to be able to see a clear pathway to help them sort of aspire to become a World Cup athlete or an Olympic athlete.
Yeah, that homegrown phrase is so important, isn't it? Because and it's that 2020 phrase, see it, you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think that's something we all need to just keep in mind as well. I wanted to ask the next question that I had already planned. And I don't want to stick too much to the script. So if there's things that you guys want to talk about, please, keep talking. But the next question that I was hoping to ask Simone was around body image. So we're getting all the difficult topics out of the way first, hopefully. It's at times it can be really hard being a female, and there's so much pressure out there, and we've got all the social media and Instagram and these perfect lives that are presented to our young people day and daily. And I really encourage people to get into sport because I think there's so much power, positive power within sport. So in that respect, you guys are role models. You're role models to my nieces who are teenagers. Are you aware of that, Simone? Is that something that you carry?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, especially in more recent times with the more exposure that the game's getting, and, it's, young kids are able to turn on their TV or go on Instagram and things like that and see what we're doing, and, the platform is there. And yeah, we are aware that we do, we are role models to these kids, and, we want to portray an image that, fulfills that role model and be exactly what we feel we need to be in that position. And, with that comes a lot of responsibility as well. We want to be seen to be doing the right things and, painting this perfect sort of picture. And I guess that's the world we kind of live in at the minute as well, with this Instagram versus reality stigma that we're all involved in at the minute. And I think, sport is just a fantastic way for people to get involved and just embrace who they are. I mean, I don't know if you see, but I get the worst action shots taken when I'm playing football. And the papers seem to look for the worst one and they'll print the actual one.
Did you see the rugby ones?
And the running ones.
Yeah, I think Claire might win. I think some of the rugby shots are pretty grim. Sorry, not of you.
No, I take that.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrible, when you do, you open the paper or you go on Twitter and you just see your face like zoomed right in and you're making the worst face. And, but it's all about embracing that, it's who we are. You've got to embrace it. And at the end of the day, you're doing what you love to do. And I think, if we're just getting it out there and we're giving female sport that platform that, the next generation can watch it and see that, we're normal, we're normal people and we're just doing what we love to do. And yeah, we get ugly photos taken, but you've just got to embrace it. And, we've slowly got to try and change that stigma around people, putting pressure on, you have to look at this and you have to look at that, because you don't, we're playing sport and we've got to embrace it. And I think us as female role models, we have to embrace that too. And we've got to get that message out for the next generation.
Absolutely. There's nothing more real than sport, and especially when you're playing sport, you can't filter that. You can't put a plant behind you and make it look good. It's reality, and I think we need to embrace that, and we need to encourage those younger generations. Hannah, have you anything to add around all of that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I have to admit, I took up running at 34. I was a good size 14. And I remember going to one of my first races and a coach came up to me and I was lined up with all the wee stick insects and I was a good hefty 10 stone. And I remember he came up to me at the end of it and I came third in this race, my first race out. And he said, you need to lose at least 3 stone. And I was aghast at him because I came third in this race. It was my first race. I'm 34 years old. I was very proud. Mm-hmm. And that was the pressure. That was the very first reaction I got from a coach. And I just went, I'm just going to stick. And it was hard because I thought, should I lose weight? Should I go on a diet and do all of this? And I went, no, I can still achieve the size I am. I've always been referred to as a good, solid girl. And I went, that's me. That's never going to change. And it certainly hasn't stopped my performances. But there was at that stage, and I still sometimes think, with all the social media, there is this perception that you have to be this perfect person. Definitely not. As long as you are fit and healthy, that's the most important thing. That will get you there because you need that health for all the endurance work and the hard work that you have to do to achieve.
I think it also falls in, obviously, tomorrow's World Mental Health Day, and that's at the back of my mind at the minute, that this conversation, there's a lot of these topics are kind of around well-being generally and well-being in females and how important sport is to that. Gemma, did you want to maybe add anything in around that?
Yeah, it's probably something I was just thinking about there too. It's probably not just being role models. I suppose there's obviously I suppose athletes and females in sport that would kind of struggle with the likes of eating disorders and things like that as well because of the pressure they probably feel to conform. And that's probably the real importance of storytelling and education, and getting the positive messaging across. You see campaigns like was it This Girl Can, I think was really positive about sort of all shapes of life. There's a sport for everybody, I suppose, for everybody to get involved in. And I think that's really important too, just I suppose the way that the female athletes themselves maybe are the self-talk and maybe the education around just making sure that they're looked after. Like we would deal, I suppose, with some players, just counselling supports and that around helping them through some struggles in that area. So probably a bit more conscious about it, but it certainly is. It's certainly something. I think just education is important, both for female athletes and using the storytelling of females, I think, for the wider audience.
And that's one of the things that's really important. As campaign manager for Game Changers, we want to tell the stories of our female footballers primarily and talk about how they're real people and they face real challenges, and this is how they overcome them through the power of sport and also that sense of community that sport can often bring. We've had a couple of questions in, which is very exciting. So the first one is for Claire. How on earth do you balance being an NHS doctor and playing international sport? I think I'm wondering it definitely.
That is definitely something that I have had to learn, and probably have had to learn the hard way. I suppose the first year that I started working as a doctor was kind of my first year on the Irish squad as well, or my second year in the Irish squad. And going from being a student to working full time and working 50, 60 hours a week, coupled with your training in the morning, getting up early for the gym, going to work, and then rushing out of work to do your training session in the evening, it wasn't sustainable for me. And for some people, I'm sure they are able to do a full-time job and do all the training. But I think for me, I had to sit back and recognize what my limits were and also prioritize certain things. So obviously I had to work in order to make money. I had to train if I wanted to play rugby and if I wanted to make it onto the World Cup squad. So it was about organisation. It was about literally sitting down at the start of each week, piecing everything together, having an idea of what each day looked like, working out if I had an evening free to just chill out or to socialise. Didn't happen very often, but yeah, it's something that I have had to adapt to. And I suppose over the past couple of years, I've been able to go less than full time. And then in the past year, I've been working for agency. So I work as a locum, and that means I can be flexible with when I work and how much I work, which is perfect for allowing me to get all the training in and all the traveling down to Dublin and whatever else I need to do. So yeah, it's definitely challenging, but good organisation definitely helps.
I'm sure that's something that's echoed by the rest of the group. Katie, have you any thoughts on how to stay organised and to schedule?
Yeah, I suppose currently we train, so we're in a semi-professional program, so we're supported to train together on a Monday or Tuesday with a salary to do that. And then we all work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it's a really nice balance. And I suppose Claire touched on it there, to have time to socialise and time to yourself. We have only recently gone to this new schedule, and it gives us a Sunday off, which is a day that, you know, all of our friends and family also have off. So it's a day for us to kind of really switch off. And it's actually affected us so positively in terms of our outcomes on the pitch and how hard we're able to train. It's just much more sustainable. But I think, yeah, we grow up doing our GCSEs, trying to manage all the sport and our A levels and our degrees. And I think it kind of is something you just learn through years and years of training and a hell of a lot of sacrifice, which I know everyone else in this call would reflect on as well. So, yeah.
And Gemma, that must be something you have to work with your players through the GPA with.
Time is the biggest challenge, just fitting everything in. Demands are probably higher on players than ever. We've done some research, I suppose, and it's nearly getting up fairly comparable to the previous study the lads had done. It's not too far off it. Obviously this year's different now, but it is just about balance, I suppose, getting that right, and I suppose empowering players to be able to take a step back when needed as well, coming back to their own mental well-being and looking after themselves, just putting their hand up. And I suppose when it gets too much, there's a bit of trust required there between players and management as well, and empowering players to be able to feel that that's okay to do that. I know most players would go to any lengths to not miss out on training or matches. But sometimes it's to their detriment, and maybe just keeping that in their mind as well, that it's okay to take a step back. So that's one of the big parts of it, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the session after this at 6 o'clock with Kelly Fay, who's a performance psychologist, she's going to talk through this type of time management stuff and stress, and how we need to be able to manage ourselves and have the self-awareness to understand when it's time to take a break. But it can often be so difficult for our sports people to do that. We have a couple of questions from our Electric Ireland Niffle Academy League. So these are players who play within the league that Electric Ireland are involved with. And there is a question from Beth, who plays for Crusaders, or Simone. So if the tech wizards behind the scenes can line that up, that would be great.
How did you feel when you found out you scored the fastest goal for women's football internationally?
Scoring that goal was probably one of the most memorable moments of my career to date. Obviously, it happened so quickly that at the time I wasn't able to kind of process. It was only after the game when I started to realise, it had broken all these records, and it was just, it was crazy. I just remember my phone was just buzzing for weeks and weeks after that. But yeah, it was an unbelievable feeling.
Brilliant. And then we also have a question for Hannah from Katie, who plays for Linfield under 19s.
What was the hardest part about climbing Mount Everest?
Hannah?
The hardest part, actually, it's the lack of oxygen, I have to admit. If I put every single one of us on the summit of Mount Everest now, we would all be dead within 2.5 minutes because of the lack of oxygen and the lack of pressure. I'm asthmatic, so it's something that I always had in the back of my head, and I was always very mindful that was going to be one of my limitations. I was climbing also with 9 Russian men who did not speak a word of English, who smoked the whole way up the mountain and smoked and drank vodka the whole way back down the mountain again. So yeah, I learned to speak Russian, a little bit of Russian, and I was shouting at them because they were the worst timekeepers in the world. They didn't understand me, but they understood the tone of my voice most of the time. So I certainly was able to get across to them that whenever I said move, they moved. So yeah, but it was just a whole experience. But I am a bad asthmatic, so it's the one thing that I always have to be mindful in all of my sports and take those times to recover whenever my body is being put under too much pressure at times.
Yeah. Gosh, Hannah, there's a question has come in through gamechangersni.com. So if anybody's watching at home, please, if you have questions for our panel, you can log in there and ask a question. Hannah, a question has come in. Have you done anything harder than climbing ever? So have you done anything more difficult?
Oh, I have to admit okay, I'm going on. I was doing a 5-day ultra endurance race over the Alps. You had to carry all your stuff with you and make time points every single time to be able to continue the next day. And on the 4th night, I fell and actually sprained my ankle and fractured my fib and tib. And I still had to run for 24 hours over the high mountains from Austria into Italy. That was hard. That was a mindset that I just had to block out the pain because everybody kept trying to pull me off the race, and I was going, I'm going to finish this. I did finish it. I was in plaster of Paris for 3 months afterwards. To my detriment, I sort of realized that I actually had quite a good, strong head at that stage. But sometimes as sports people, the goal can sometimes push us beyond what our body can deal with at times. And I did suffer afterwards. Didn't put me off.
Hannah, Claire, as a doctor, has been shaking her head and covering her face.
I don't understand how you could run with a fractured tib and tib the whole day.
Yeah, it was, I'm not going to lie. I remember actually getting to the finish line and I put my foot over because I had a chip on my number and my front of my vest. I went over the finish line and I just stood and cried because all of a sudden the pain the level just went beyond what I could cope with. And I was in a heap then.
And Hannah, what do you do, for fun now? Like, what?
I'm actually recovering. I had a very bad, I was training for an Ironman triathlon 16, 17 months ago, and I had a bad accident on the bike. Okay. And I'm just actually getting back walking at the moment. Okay. And it's hard because I still want to be competitive. I still want to do things, but I'm realizing that this has been a long time recovering, much longer than I had hoped. Patience is not one of my virtues. And I'm just taking it slowly. So I'm learning to walk. I'm talking to people again whenever I'm out walking, doing a lot of cooking. Jane, great. I've got her cookbook. She was fantastic. I do a lot of cooking from her book. And it's learning patience, I have to admit.
Okay. Just on the nutrition, as Hannah has mentioned it, do you ladies have any tips for anybody watching with quick and easy recipes ahead of training? Or Simone, I'm looking at you because I'm imagining that you're always planning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in quite a fortunate position that I get most of my meals for me at the club. They're really good in terms of what they provide. Yeah, so it is. I'm so lucky because cooking is not one of my strongest points there. I'm not that good in the kitchen. So, but yeah, I always go for, just before a game, I always make sure I'm getting in my jacket potato, beans and cheese. That's something I've started ever since I was back in Mid-Ulster when I was 15. So I've carried that right through all the way.
Very good, very good. A student staple as well. I think my days at uni were jacket potatoes, beans and cheese too. Claire, what about you? Have you any nutritional tips for us?
Well, I suppose on match days, I tend to load up on the carbs. So I usually go for porridge. So Tony and Jen's demonstration was great earlier. Gave me some new ideas. So yeah, usually porridge. And I suppose like if it's an international match, we usually have a time for breakfast and then pre-match meal about 3 hours before. And for pre-match meal, I always have rice pudding with jam. So that is like my go-to. So good.
Katie?
I suppose the biggest thing is preparation when it comes to food. So I have my, not to sound like a prune, but I have my overnight oats in the fridge every night before I go to bed. So that's just taken care of so I can bring them to the gym or whatever. I think with regards to my biggest challenge is, like, for example, this week it's a down week for me and I want to eat everything that surrounds me. And yeah, I'm doing less training than I was last week. So yeah, it's just managing those points of feeling super hungry, but maybe you haven't done the exercise to justify eating everything you see. So, but yeah, planning is definitely number one with nutrition.
Absolutely. And Gemma, have you anything to add around that?
Probably not the best of advice since I retired from county. He's just doing it for 1 week, but I'd say I've been eating everything for the last 2 years now. But no, like chicken stir fry was always my go-to, just the handiest, whatever you could throw into the pan, I suppose. And just over like rice or noodles, but probably got into more sort of growing my own spuds and beetroot and stuff at home here. So that's it's probably a healthier way when you actually get into it. There's something very rewarding about growing your own and cooking it up then. So probably enjoying that side of it a bit more now. It's probably keeping me a bit healthier than I would be otherwise.
I think a lot of people found that during the lockdown that growing their own vegetables and herbs and spices and things was something that they could really get into. We actually got chickens, so we now have lovely fresh eggs every morning, which is brilliant for us at home. In terms of the lockdown, how did you all find that? I think I'm going to start with Simone for this one. How was your lockdown experience? I saw a lot of coffee being made on Instagram.
I had to buy a coffee machine because I couldn't go out and get coffee. So literally first week of lockdown, I went and just got a full barista style coffee machine so I could make coffee from home. But no, yeah, lockdown was a challenge, I think, for everyone. You know, I had just literally come back off an international camp and we were straight into lockdown and we didn't know what was happening, if our season was going to continue or, you know, there was no kind of clarity. I don't think anybody knew what was going to happen. And, you know, we were training, we were trying to keep fit from home. You know, the club thankfully sent us, you know, equipment that we could do training from home. And I've got my dog. So before I got the gym equipment, I was squatting the dog. He's only a pug as well, so he's tiny. So I was just, you know, just trying to get creative in lockdown and, you know, and then obviously we got the news that the season was cancelled. So we actually got some proper downtime training wise, which was really nice. and then trying to plan for the next season. So it was just a surreal sort of period of time, but good from being able to switch off and reflect. It was just, you never get to switch off from the world. So for a couple of weeks, I thought, it was really nice just to sit back and just reflect on everything and then go again.
Absolutely. And in terms of being part of a squad, how, for the panelists who are part of a squad, how did you all interact with each other? Did you have WhatsApp groups? Was there endless Zoom video calls, or what way did that work for you, Katie?
Yeah, I suppose for us it was at the beginning of lockdown, the Olympics was going ahead, so we were like full steam ahead, training by ourselves, but constantly sending each other video clips, of our gym sessions, running sessions, kind of just because we were still fully in the buzz of the Olympics. And then whenever it was cancelled, our whole lockdown experience was flipped. Then we didn't really have the same end goal, and it was really, really difficult for us who are used to being together 2 or 3 days a week to have to go through that without your teammates. And I suppose there's only a certain amount of emotional support that can be provided through Zoom quizzes. Yeah. So I think, it really did take a turn then, and I suppose we're only now that we're kind of back together, really recovering from that disappointment. Not to get everyone playing the little violin or anything, but
no.
It kind of switched as soon as the Olympics was cancelled for every one of us. We switched it into family mode, and just using it as time to really spend with our family and our loved ones that maybe as elite athletes we don't get to do very often. I know I like live on a farm, and I would have spent a lot of time with my family having barbecues on the farm and stuff like that there, which was really, really nice. So yeah, it was tough, but we're through it now, and we're preparing for next year, which is all full steam ahead.
And as a squad, you've had so many ups and downs, so you're probably much more resilient than you realise.
Yeah, I think so. And I suppose for years we trained very little together. So actually we used to have to do a lot of self-driven training. So in the lockdown, when it was all about running sessions by yourself or gym sessions by yourself, it was something that kind of came second nature to us, and kind of just took us back a couple of years to when we had to do a lot more of that, which definitely stood to us, because since we've got back on the pitch, like there's been no regression or anything like that. We're consistently improving, which is good to see.
Brilliant. And Claire, I'm sure your lockdown experience was very different to all of ours.
Yeah, my lockdown experience was pretty busy. I suppose rugby-wise, it came just towards the end of the Six Nations, and I had been rehabbing throughout Six Nations, and I was hoping that I was going to get back to playing potentially in the last couple of games. So that was a bit gutting from that point of view. And then obviously with COVID coming in, the hospital just got hectic. A&E initially was really quiet whenever no one really knew what COVID was, and the fear was kind of there. People stayed at home and didn't come in. But then obviously as it kind of got throughout the community, and people kind of became more aware of what it was, A&E just became packed and hectic, and wasn't a very nice working environment at all. And that's kind of has continued since then. It's been really busy in work. So that has been my lockdown. I bought myself an exercise bike so that I could keep up my training, and actually ended up getting another surgery on my ankle just towards the end of lockdown. So back into another bit of rehab now, in the hope that I can potentially get back to playing again.
Gosh, it's never a straightforward journey, sure it isn't.
No.
I was going to ask around advice for our young people and our young sports stars coming through. So you have all taken a different path, a different journey to get where you are. And I wondered if each of you, and I haven't asked you to prepare this, so apologies, but I'm asking you now. I wondered if each of you could, we'll start with Hannah, if each of you could give a bit of advice to younger generation within your sport, or just generally? Our campaign's called Game Changers. We're always trying to empower women and girls, and I suppose that's what today's all about. It's all about International Day of the Girl and how we can provide practical and useful tools and information. So I think there's nothing more practical than some advice from our panel. So Hannah, would you go first, please?
Yeah. One of the quotes that I saw years ago that I've always lived by was hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I do not see myself as being a very talented person. I am somebody that works very, very hard for the goals that I've set myself. And so I really, truly do believe that, sort of, if you want something and you're prepared to work hard for it and you give it 100%, then you can achieve it. There will be highs, there will be lows. But even though you may not get your goal the first time, nor the second time, nor the third time in some of the things that I've done, because I wanted them, I went back again and again and again, and I learned each time what went well, what didn't go so well, what do I have to do to be better the next time. And that's something, that's why I know that I've been successful, because I've been passionate about what I want to do. I've set those clear goals, and I have worked really hard, because I'm not a naturally talented person.
I doubt that, Hannah.
Oh no, I do believe that. I honestly do believe that. I've seen myself. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of females, much more talented than me, that just didn't achieve the goals because they weren't prepared to go that 100% and give it that 100%.
And that just comes down to determination, or as my father would call it, bloody-mindedness.
Yeah, a bit of thwanness in there. I was told that I was very thwan Northern Irish lady by quite a lot of people, and I've gone, I'll take that. I'll take it.
And just as an aside, during the summer when all our women's football activity was cancelled, we pivoted as campaign marketeers, and we did a series of podcasts, and Hannah was one of our amazing guests, and I think our most listened to podcast. So if anybody wants to listen to 40 minutes of Hannah with Claire McLaughlin,
so do it.
You can go on to Belfast Live, Game Changers, NI on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll find it there. But very inspirational. So sorry to ask the next person to follow that, but Gemma, what advice do you have for the next generation coming through?
It was great advice from Hannah. But yeah, same, probably fairly similar. Like I'd probably just say, I was thinking about there, just be fearless. Probably sums it up best. Just don't be afraid to take opportunities that come your way, and say yes to whether it's camps or different teams or trying out new things. Just go for it, and don't be afraid to try new things. Take opportunities in the lifetime of their existence. And I suppose I look back and sometimes you'll be wondering, was it worth it all? Just how much time you put in and how much you sacrifice for it. But at the end of the day, like if I had to go back and do it again, I would probably give it twice as much, to be honest, if it was possible. You don't have any regrets, and I always got far more out of it than I put into it. So I would say stick at it and be fearless about taking opportunities.
Brilliant advice. Katie?
For me, it would probably be just to any young girls. There is a sport out there for everyone, and I think a lot of people maybe try one or two and decide that they're not a sporty individual, and I just couldn't disagree with that more. I just think there's such a variety out there, and there's something for everyone. And actually, if you look across the island of Ireland, there is a role model in almost every sport within our country. So there's someone there to aspire to be like. And it doesn't have to be to compete at sport at the top level. It's all about enjoyment. So yeah, it would just be to any young girls, like, find the sport that you enjoy and just keep trying them all until you find one you enjoy. And whether you just play it socially, then like the enjoyment that you get from it, the friendship, the connections for life, it's so valuable. I know that my teammates are people that I could trust with anything, and will be for the rest of my life. So yeah, it's just keep trying everything until you find the one that brings you the most enjoyment.
Katie, it's funny you say that. Jackie Hurley has obviously written a book with about 25 top Irish sportswomen. And I got a copy for my daughter, and she has loved looking at all the different sports. She didn't understand about Annalise Murphy and the sailing, and she's really enjoyed your story, and she has her favourites that we go to. And I suppose the home that we're in, she would traditionally be playing hockey or football or tennis. And now she's wondering, although I don't know if it's going to be feasible where we live, if she could start sailing. So yeah, there is a sport for everybody out there. Claire, have you some advice?
Yeah, I would say whatever sport you're doing, just believe in yourself and your own ability. Because I think if you do something with belief, you're going to do it so much better. And just a practical note on that, it was a bit of advice I was given a few years ago. Write down a list of the strengths that you have, because a lot of times you'll be told by coaches, these are things that you need to work on. But I think it's important that you know yourself, what your strengths are and why you're playing your sport, why you're on a certain team, and what makes you so good. I think those things are really important. So just believe in yourself and your own ability.
Yeah. And Simone?
Yeah, I think just to echo kind of a little bit of what everybody said, I get asked this question a lot from kids. They're like, oh, Simone, have you got any advice? And the first thing I always say to them is make sure you're enjoying what you do. Whenever I was a kid growing up, I just loved playing football. But whatever your sport is, and like it was said before, in terms of there is a sport out there for everyone, and it's finding what you love and just enjoy it. Play with a smile on your face, and if you work really hard and you believe in your ability, you never know where it could take you. Sport's taken all of us to many different places in the world, and it's led us to so many people and friends for life, and the relationships and the experiences that you have through sport. It's fantastic. And if you enjoy what you do and you really believe in yourself, you can have them opportunities too.
Brilliant. I'm loving this chat. It's so encouraging. I'm not a sportswoman at all, but I'm feeling very enthusiastic about all of this. Now, we've had a question in about role models, and it says that you are all incredible role models, but who were your role models growing up? I always find this really interesting to ask who people looked up to when they were younger. So, Katie, will we start with you?
Yeah. My role model, funny one, was my PE teacher in school, who whenever I first met her, was playing hockey for Ireland. So she started out as my PE teacher. She's actually mentioned in the book that you were talking about. She started out as my PE teacher, and then hockey coach, and then teammate playing for the local club team. And now I am, for my sins, the coach of Ballymoney Hockey Club. So I'm now coaching her. Yeah, I suppose I always say to people, I was so blessed in that my role model was someone that I spent hours upon hours with on a hockey pitch. And I suppose young people grow up and they might have role models such as Lionel Messi, or, people that they never get any sort of exposure to, never get the opportunity to meet. Whereas my role model was someone I was seeing 2 or 3 times a week on a hockey pitch and getting the best advice from. So it's something that I feel very passionately about, and it's why I'm back coaching the club, because I just want to have the opportunity to actually spend time with these young hockey players on a pitch, because I know that's what made the difference for me.
Absolutely. And conscious we've only got a few minutes left, but I'm really keen to hear from the rest of the group about role models. So Gemma, did you have a role model when you were younger?
Mine's fairly similar. I suppose at our local club, Eilish Gormley was the big star at that stage. And I vaguely remember going down to Croke Park in '99 to watch Tyrone in the All-Ireland final, and I was like, oh my God, women can play in Croke Park too. This is great. It was the first time it probably ever clicked on me. Those adult female women were playing sport. That it was a real moment that stayed with me. So yeah, it was probably Eilish, and then Peter Canavan was a big star as well, and probably Eric Cantona were the other two main ones that I looked up to.
Brilliant. Simone?
Yeah, so for me, obviously, back whenever I was a little kid, very rarely, I think twice a year, I would get to watch women play football. So all of my exposure was to the men's game, so I actually only had them really to look up to. So David Beckham was my hero growing up. I used to spend hours practicing trying to bend the ball the way he could, but I guess that's the beauty of it now, is that young kids can turn on their TV and have female players to watch. You know, that's something I never had. So I just think, you know, the fact that I could potentially be a role model to a young girl is just fantastic, because that's what you want. You want young girls to be able to look up to female footballers and not have to look up to men like I did.
Absolutely, absolutely. Claire?
So when I was younger, I didn't even know that girls and women could play rugby. So whenever I did learn that, Dan Carter was still my role model, because you didn't have any exposure to female rugby. So he was the person that I wanted to be like. But like, if I'm to have a daughter in the future, I want her to have a female sportswoman to look up to. Because I think it's just so much more relatable to see someone who has gone through the same journey and someone who has shown the pathway that you could potentially take yourself. I think that's something really special.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. Hannah?
Oh God, here the granny in the pack is now talking again. I remember black and white TV. Do any of you even know that in 1972? Oh God, I am showing my age here. I remember my mum and dad, actually, believe it or not, would have been my role models, because there was no social media. Like, I mean, God, there was black and white TV. That's what we were looking at. I remember them, you know, sort of sitting me down in front of the TV in the lunar landings, 1969. Oh, good. And then also in 1972, whenever Dame Mary Peters won the Olympic medal, my parents just turned around and they kept saying to me, you work hard, you can achieve anything. Look at them. They have done it, you know, sort of. And I believe them, I suppose, because I trusted them. They were my biggest influences. And because they said if I worked hard, I could achieve, I believed them. So I came away with that attitude that I can be and do whatever I want to do in life.
Absolutely. Ladies, thank you so much. We've gone over time, which is no surprise to anybody that knows me either. But thank you so much for being part of this. It's been really a privilege to talk to you all today, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. There is talk that this is going to be made into a podcast, so we'll maybe get to listen back at some point. But yeah, thank you so much, and please engage on the hashtag GameChangersNI, because I think there might be more questions come through. But thanks again, ladies.